Hi guys, Garage RC here, back on another video. Today's video is about the Hammer HT1, Hammer Toys HT1. So this is a rear-wheel drive drift car that has been supplied to me by Chan RC. Thank you, Chan. Always looking after me. Very happy to be dealing with you. This car I got on. I was kind of bored almost with the choices I had. I built the Drift R2, so Chan kindly suggested I try out the HT1, Hammer HT1. So this is the car assembled now. I think the wheelbase on this now is, let's show you. I think we're about 108 millimeters. Yeah, about 108. That's an approximation, but you can fully adjust the wheelbase on this. I'll show that in a moment. This is my Veilside R32 1/24 scale GTR shell, which I haven't quite finished yet, but it needs a good polish up. But on the whole, I'm pretty happy with it. Could have been better, but like I said, I'm pretty happy with it. It looks pretty cool. It's got some nice features on it. Okay, let's get to the chassis first. We'll talk about the shell afterwards. So, as you can see, it's been set up with magnetic mounts. So let's talk about the car itself first before we discuss how it handles. I'll talk about the build and the various issues I've had. Okay, so it's a double deck chassis, as you can probably see there. The arrangements make it quite neat to set up. At the moment I'm laying the battery across, but I think if you make the wheelbase long enough you can lay it lengthways, but it seems to be working for me. It's a fully adjustable chassis, so you can slide, undo some screws and slide it backwards and forwards to get the wheelbase wheels exactly in the wheel arches of the shell you're using, which I always prefer to the options where you have set screw sizes, and although it makes it easier to set it up for a particular size, it makes it difficult to fine tune. So that's good. It's mainly carbon fiber, as you can see here. The plastic parts, although look not too good, are not bad. You know, they're fairly tough. So I didn't strip any screws or anything like that, or strip any of the plastic parts during the assembly. The instructions themselves I'll get to in a second, but let's just go through some more of the features of the car. So double wishbone suspension front and rear. Steering angle is pretty good. Let's see if I can't get this laid down flat so you can see it better. But you can get pretty much a full lock on it. So one of the issues with this car, which I will go through in a second, is the rear drive shafts. But so you get a good lock. Okay. The suspension itself is spring shocks front and rear. Which are very easy to set up quite loose. And I think that really does help in the handling. Very free, very easy. I didn't have to do much adjusting there at all, so that's a plus point. Same for the rear. These are similar to the shocks that you get on the Drift R2. Again, very loose, very easy to set up. Now, the gearbox itself leaves a lot to be desired, but it's functional. Let's just leave it at that, shall we? It's functional. I don't particularly like the gears. I don't like the way it was built, but it's functional and it works, so we'll let it off. The front suspension also allows for a really good camber adjustment. Now I don't know if you can see this here. I'll try and zoom in and show you as I always do. Screw there, you undo that and you can slide this arm forwards and back as much as you like, so within this runner here. That is fantastic. That is a very good setting on this car that I really appreciate. The brass looking parts here, you can rotate in and out to extend the arms. Equally, you can also unscrew the plastic ball end here out of the arm. Now this was a real pet hate of mine during the build of this. These plastic arms, the way you have to almost thread them in. So this has to go over the plastic arm, put a thread onto it. If you over twist these at any point, they can break. So I tend to adjust them from this area here rather than here. But this is something that can be improved upon quite easily by using a metal rod inside like the Drift R2. But that's for another video. Okay, what else? So that's the front suspension and the front camber adjustment. The toe in and out is relatively easy, just like any other car. You pop the ball ends off, twist it accordingly, and there is no ride height adjustment on this. Everything has to be done from the shock tension, which again is something I don't like. That would be a lot better if you had actual screws to set the ride height, but there are a few cars that are like that. What sets this car apart at the moment is the active rear toe. Now, I don't know if I'm describing that correctly, but what that means is that as the arm moves up and down, if I push the arm all the way up, you can see the wheel almost toes out. It does toe out, not almost. And as I lower it down, it goes back to the straight. So if you set the weighting up on the car correctly, you can have the toe parallel, but as it slides and leans on one arm, the toe changes, and this actually helps the stability of the drifting. So that's quite a good feature, which I wasn't sure I'd like at first, and does make setting up very difficult. But once set up, I think it actually gives the car a lot of stability and character. So that's a good thing, albeit tricky. So the build itself was virtually impossible because the instructions weren't in a language I could understand, and even then there was no indication of screw sizes or anything like that I could make out. Thankfully, the car was relatively simple to build, so it wasn't too much of a problem. But yes, that could have made things easier. As you can see, I'm using everyone's favourite servo at the moment, the A11 CLS. Let's see if I can get that in there. Also, I'm using the electronics out of one of my XRXs, DPA Sport, and the Generation 3 gyro, and that's mated to a Fly Sky MB4 receiver. So there you have the setup. Now this is similar to the Drift Art 2. There's a direct link from the servo to the steering arms, which gives very good steering. Only this time the servo is upside down, but I do like the way they've incorporated it into the frame of the chassis. This I do like, so that is quite clever. So there's some clever ideas on this car, but I think things that could be improved greatly. So let's talk a bit more about problems. So I'm going to just go over to the parts bin here. So this is one of the problems I encountered. As you can see here, the cup has broken off this rear gear, which is a fixed rear diff. So sorry to mention, guys, fixed rear diff on this car. Now, thankfully, Chan had the foresight to send me extras. So I had some spares. Thank you again, Chan, very nice of you. And it enabled me to still put the car together. This car does come with two sets of drive shafts, different sizes for different widths. Now, the problem I've got at the moment is using the drive shafts that come with the set. The moment you pick the car up off the ground, can you see how the drive shaft is now dislodged? So when you put the car back down, you have to rotate and make sure the drive shaft is in. Now, if it had ride adjustments, that would keep the wheels in place, but as you can see, boom, drive shaft is out. If you then try and drive it by putting it down, that's how this happens. It breaks it. So this is a feature that I think with a bit of adjusting with different drive shaft spacers and whatnot, I think I can improve this, and certainly I'll come back to that. So that was a flaw for me, definitely, that needs looking at. Another problem I found with this car, which again, I don't want to take away from its handling, I will go through that in a moment, it is good. I had to make my own stoppers here so that the steering didn't lock if it went past a certain point. Now the DPA Sport, I think DRZ version 2, the Drift Art 2, they all have these stoppers, but I think the GLD doesn't. Yes, so this is a pet hate of mine. I think they should have this as standard on any rear-wheel drive drift car. You should have stoppers to stop the wheels locking. How I've made this is I used a servo horn, the end of a servo horn, which I cut off. I used a grub screw, I think it's a M2 grub screw, and then a small screw to secure it to the second hole that was free on the knuckle. So that worked out quite well, and with that I've been able to make, and these are adjustable by the way, I can swivel them as I want to change the locking position, but that's the position that works. So with this setup now, one final thing to mention I think, which is worth a note, the actual track of this car, the width. So set up as it is. This is with 0 offset. Okay. The rear track about 77-78 millimeters. Now that is something that you could say isn't a problem per se for most of the shells, but with this 1/24 scale I struggled to find wheels that would fit, so I had to use 0 offset Geo Racing wheels, and it just about fits in, and that's at the minimum setting. So what I mean by that is that I've actually turned these all the way in close as I can, and that's the minimum width I could do. So that's fine if you're using a Camaro shell, ZR1, Audi R8, any of the wider shells. But when you get into sort of the more Skyline type shells, then it's going to be an issue. Although I think it's worth mentioning, this car does not come with an adapter to fit a Mini Z mount at the front or side mounts. So you're limited in what you can use on this car unless you've got magnetic mounts. The wheelbase is adjustable from 90, I think, up to 130 millimeters, but you're going to need magnetic mounts. That does eliminate a lot of the issues, but okay, here's a quality control issue already. The ball joint declipping. Okay, let's go back in. Let's carry on. So I think with this, what you've got to remember is that the front width is more standard. So I've got 2 offset wheels on the front, and we're measuring about, let's see, yeah, about 75 millimeters as set for the car I'm using at the moment. But the rear was very wide. So if you intend on using, say, a Skyline shell, like a 94mm Skyline shell, an R32, R34, R33, you're going to have to do something to make this shorter to be able to fit in. Maybe use, I don't know, trying to eliminate the brass joint in between, bring the wheels in a bit more, use shorter drive shafts. That's something I'll address in another video, but it's the only downside I can see here. So again, this car does not have any mounting system for a Mini Z. You have to use magnets to mount shells. That's why I used a 1/24 scale shell off the bat, because I was quite happy to fit the magnets on that anyway. Right, so overall, what have we got here? Let's in summary. Fully adjustable wheelbase out the box. You have to provide your own electronics. Gearbox is not the best. Steering is good and efficient. Servo to use is the A11. Magnetic mounts needed. Fairly lightweight. I think the weight of this car is, let me just have a quick look, 113 with the battery, 130 grams, which is, I think, similar to the Drift R2. I can't remember now off the top of my head. I'll have to look at the last video. Handling wise, the car handles like a dream. So despite all its flaws, and I'm not recommending you rush out and buy this car, guys. It was a headache to build, okay? It was a headache to build, and I can see flaws of this car will frustrate other people. So I'm not going to say it's a good buy, but it was a cheap buy for definite. It was way cheaper than the other cars, and it does handle. So if you're looking at a cheap 1/24 scale, you're fairly adaptable and know how to deal with the issues this car is going to present. Once you've got it set up and you know what you're doing, this actually handles very nicely, on par with the Drift R2. And I think that rear active toe really makes a difference. It makes it kind of sweet. So that's what I think of the car overall. Yeah, I'm viewing this car more as a project. I love cars like this because the flaws are what make me excited. I know what I can do with parts of this car that I can improve, and that's what I intend to do. So guys, I'm going to leave you with some footage of the car drifting now and see what you think. So guys, I've had to turn the engine sound off for the car because it's so noisy. This is by far one of the noisiest cars I've run, and apologies for that. My wife got in the video, so even this drifting footage right now isn't as I wanted it to be. I had to edit her out, but she was complaining about the noise the car was making. It was very noisy, coupled with the 1/24 scale shell. I think because the gears are uncovered, it made a real echoey, grindy sound. So for that reason, it wasn't favourable for home use. But otherwise, as you can see here, it does turn beautifully, and it does change direction really easily, really floats around. And what I'm doing here is literally weaving backwards and forward to show you, even with this long chassis, 108 millimeters, and with a long Skyline 1/24 scale shell, it moves. And I've done a top-down view here just so you can see the kind of fun I was having with it, but it really did dance very, very good. So despite my misgivings about the build quality, the difficulty of the build, all the problems, this is a very good handling car, and I think with a bit of work I could make this really good.
So as you can see there, literally just wherever I want to change direction, it will change direction. Even if it's in mid-slide, it will just stop and go the other way. And I've not used any counterweights in this car. This is just set up as is with the shell on top. Back to the front angle here, just trying to show you how control that rear tail is. You can see I'm actually, I'm purposely stuttering it. I'm just changing throttle and steering angle just to make it swing and stop swinging. It really does balance well. Very impressed with this car. It's a bit faster than the Drift R2. Definitely got more pace, and I think that's because it hasn't got the belt drive. I'm using a 3,500 kV motor, and it is quicker than the Drift R2. Not as quick as say a DPA Sport. It feels light, very similar to the Drift R2. It's comparable. And I think the rear active toe is something really special on this car. I think the TLC has something similar, but I haven't driven that car yet and I haven't tested it. But this one, very sweet. I could do long slides, short slides, very controllable, and yeah, overall to drive, beautiful. So that's my opinion of the car. It's a good drive, not the best build, not the best quality. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.